So good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start in a minute. There's just a couple of people arriving still. I thank you, Nelson and KGH, being on mute. I'm not ignoring you. I can't see you, and you have to be on mute, but I'm not ignoring you. I hope that works. So it's a very packed presentation, and basically how I try to get ready for this is to think that I'm in an airplane and you put your seatbelt on and you're taking off, because the speed of it's a very scripted presentation, will go quite fast. Thank you very much for welcoming the building our capacity to do more and better patient-oriented research at UBCO, which is the host site for the interior region for this event. And we have participants as well at Kootenay Lake Hospital in Nelson and Kelowna General Hospital in this location. So my name is Karen Maywald. I'm the Regional Practice Lead, Research Knowledge Translation for the Interior Health Research Department. I also lead patient engagement and stakeholder engagement in research as a part of the BC Support Unit Interior Centre. On top of that, I'm an embedded scholar studying patient engagement, but I won't speak much to that today, and I'm adjunct faculty with the Faculty of Medicine. So in terms of disclosure, I have no conflicts of interest to disclose. I am here as a patient engagement lead to share knowledge that we're building around patient engagement in British Columbia. I would like to acknowledge that some of the content for this workshop was taken from Foundations in Patient-Oriented Research, which is a 3-module course developed under leadership and direction of CIHR, and it's available through the CIHR through the BC Support Unit. The 3-module course is delivered over about 2.5 days. Very quickly, introductions to workshop objectives, and as you can see here, we'll talk a bit about the benefits and the value of patient-oriented research, or POR, when and how to engage patients in research, ethical, cultural competence considerations, very short discussions. I'll raise some awareness around some tools that are made available through the BC Support Unit, and a brief discussion and some questions in the end. And please complete the evaluation survey. The objectives for the workshop today, the expectation and the hope is that participants will be able to define patient-oriented research, explain why patient-oriented research is valuable and beneficial, identify some examples, when and how to engage patient partners, identify examples, important ethical and cultural competence considerations, identify potential opportunities to apply in your research, and be able to describe what patient-oriented research resources are available. So what do we mean by patient? Continues to be discussion around the term patient. It's promoted by some and loaded by others. The patient word is encompassing, can be seen as encompassing. If you think of the word patient, what comes to your mind? One of you perhaps want to share the 3. Anybody? Patient, just patient. Okay, the other word that come up is what people think of as patient. Could be public, person, survivor, community, consumer, resident, caregiver. So when we talk about patient, I would like you to be aware that it has different meaning for different people. And we have the word was chosen in collaboration with patients, in working collaboratively with providers and researchers and health policy makers. Do you think it was the patients then who want to be called patients? Yeah, it was the decision was the CIHR strategy has worked right with patient partners from the beginning, but even among the group there's still variance how much they would like to integrate that word, the term. Individuals with a personal experience or a health issue and their informal caregivers, including family and friends. This is based on the SPORE patient engagement framework, which was prepared in 2015. So what is patient-oriented research? Well, different people have different ideas. Of course, as it goes, working with different patient partners and different stakeholders. How it is defined, it's research done in partnership with patients that answers research questions that matter to patients and aims to improve healthcare. How is patient-oriented research demonstrated? So these 5 criteria are chosen in order to look at research. For example, when you prepare a grant proposal or when you speak with patient partners, when you're furthering patient engagement in your research, these are the 5 criteria that are promoted throughout the BC support unit and throughout strategy for patient-oriented research. Engage patients as partners. Focus on patient-identified priorities, improve patient outcomes, engage multidisciplinary teams in partnership with relevant stakeholders, aim to apply knowledge generated to improve healthcare systems and practices. So this is nothing new for most of you, I am sure. I just wanted to share this with you. How else can we look at what is patient engagement? If we look perhaps more at the administrative organizational level, patients, partners can play a role in governance. They can have a role in and I'll speak to that a little bit later, they can have a role in developing research in institutions, in organizations. They can have a role and have a role in priority setting where they meaningfully and actively collaborate, and they can be involved and co-lead research, and they can be a part of knowledge translation. Knowledge translation, integrated knowledge translation throughout the entire research cycle. It's used here as a bullet, but please see knowledge translation where you're mobilizing knowledge between the patient partners and the researchers and the providers or clinicians that are engaged. Again, this is built on the SPORE, Patient Strategy for Patient-Oriented Research, Patient Engagement Framework developed in 2014. What are some local examples to give you an idea? And some of you may be familiar with the work done by Dr. Rochelle Hull. She's at UBCO, an Associate Professor of Social Work, co-director, Center for Inclusion and Citizenship. She's involved right now also with CREST BD, and this CREST BD, just through Erin Michalak, won a huge CIHR award for transformations in patient engagement. Very successful in engaging patient partners, but more focused in this area around psychosocial issues in bipolar disorder. Other local examples, Leslie Bryant, Regional Practice Lead Research Knowledge Translation, Interior Health Research Department, is doing tremendous work. She's the Indigenous Engagement Lead. Currently, Leslie is developing a research program which is informed by Indigenous populations across interior health. Myself, Karen Mywald, Regional Practice Lead. I lead, together with a very strong group of patient partners, we're developing the research program, which is informed by their different perspectives and what we hear and understand from stakeholders across interior health. We're doing currently a study, it's called the Patient Engagement Project, to study how is engagement done in a learning health system. The peer committee is currently 6 members. There's variance, people stay on for 1 or 2 years or shorter or longer, but we're meeting monthly and we're helping to shape patient engagement and research in the interior health, in the interior region. So these are good examples of some collaborative research projects in our work to address strategic priorities through the Ministry of Health, but as well other emerging issues For example, there's lots of work done around mental health and substance use in rural and remote communities. Again, academics are involved in that. So there is a growing body of local researchers engaging with patients in doing research. So the next slide, I'll give you 3 minutes, and I'm going to ask one volunteer to please list what you learned about the definition of patient-oriented research and its characteristics. Okay, who would like to volunteer? Thank you.
It's research and in partnership with patients and answers questions that are relevant to patients and improve healthcare. And characteristics involve, allowing patients to control the governance structure.
My apologies for interrupting, but could you please hit the microphone so that we can hear you?
It's research done in partnership with patients that answers patients' questions or questions relevant to patients, and it improves healthcare.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing. All right, moving right along. I spoke very quickly about SPORE and a BC support unit. For those that are new to it, it's a Canadian Institute for Health Research Strategy for Patient-Oriented SPORE. It's about providing evidence to inform the development of health policies and improve the healthcare system. It's a national strategy. British Columbia is the last province to come on board, started in 2016. SPORE has been rolled out in, for example, Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, but just recently started up in 2016 in British Columbia. The BC Support Unit, which is based in Vancouver, is a multi-partner organization which is created to support, streamline, and increase patient-oriented research throughout BC. And each health authority, Fraser Health, Interior Health, Vancouver Islands, and which one am I missing? Those four, Northern, of course, have partnership agreements to further patient-oriented research in collaboration with the health authorities. Okay, I think we're doing pretty good for time. So it's important when in doing research as upcoming clinicians or current clinicians being engaged in research in a scholarly role. Why this came about, a couple of reasons are mentioned here. We're aware of the rising cost of healthcare. It was an identified need for current evidence to inform decisions by healthcare providers, health system decision makers, and patients, hence the new partnership. I think this has been shared a lot, that it takes approximately an average of 16 years for research evidence to reach clinical practice. Another main concern around research, only 14% is believed to make it into day-to-day clinical practice. So what you can see from this slide is that by working collaboratively in the entire research cycle to ensure that the research and the possible outcome of the research resonates with the knowledge users right from the beginning. Here's an interesting little framework that starts on the bottom to really consider, which considers when knowledge users, patients, care providers, health systems makers, and researchers provide input on identifying health research priorities and participate in the design and undertaking of research projects, when research is conducted in areas knowledge users value, and when researchers understand the value of user involvement and users understand the value of research, then knowledge users will influence and accelerate decision-making, translation, and uptake of new practices, which is then in turn leading to improved patient and provider experience, improved health outcome, and a more sustainable healthcare system. So what does the literature say about patient engagement in health research? These are just a few examples of some of the published literature on patient engagement in health research. The next slides will summarize some of these benefits and also challenges that are identified in the literature. The literature is absolutely mushrooming at the moment. There was not so much in publications to also speak about the portion of engaging patients and patient partners. But here are just a few examples that are encouraged to familiarize yourself with. But again, there's lots of really good literature coming out and other systematic reviews as well from different perspectives. So the benefits identified in the literature enhance the quality and the relevance of the research, expands the applicability of research, empowers patients to support implementations of the findings in the practice, since they are encouraged to engage from the beginning and share knowledge with the researchers and the care providers and the decision makers, enables user-focused research objectives and questions, user-friendly information, questionnaires, and interview schedules, consumer-focused interpretation of data, enhanced translation, dissemination, and uptake of research, and it can increase study enrollment rates. So by engaging with patient partners from the beginning, as we're doing right now in the interior, it is really wonderful experience where you in the conversation in developing the study, the patient partners can already give feedback on the research materials that you're using, and it is also wonderful that they can invite people who they know from their own network to also become a part of the research project. So hence the study enrollment rates might improve. There's also challenges. I'm the last one to deny that it takes extra time and funding needed for engagement. An overarching worry of tokenism, particularly over time. In the beginning, people come together and have lovely ideas. The challenge is, particularly when research takes more time or there's unexpected challenges on the way, to keep patients engaged, it can be challenging. There's a struggle, perceived struggle with relinquishing control and managing research projects. Scope can lead to conflict, so it is important in my experience to clarify that from the beginning, what the project scope is and what the person's personal interest in the study is, and to have that conversation at the beginning of a project. There can be tensions between academic criteria for quality research and user perspectives can arise. So these are important points to consider, and that's again nothing new, but when you start a research project, to consider that these dynamics and interactions in building relationship happen. It's like working in any team where you build the relationship and there might be different ideas and challenges that come with that, but I would like to highlight the opportunities as well that it brings, because it really can be of great benefit working together. So there's another question for you, please. Identify any benefits of patient-oriented research that make you want to introduce patient-oriented research principles in your research or improve the way you do it already. 3 minutes, and then I'll ask, please, somebody to volunteer.
I can share. I would classify them into patient and researcher benefits. And as far as the patient benefits, they play a role in helping do the research that addresses their own priorities, needs, and in the methodologies, the evaluation, and the culture of the research. And then from the researcher's point of view, they start to become embedded within the culture of the patient. And of course, the research is relevant, and the patients are inclined to participate more. Recruitment is better, and the quality of the research may sometimes be compromised because a patient doesn't want to be randomized, but the validity in many ways of the research is improved.
Thank you.
How do you?
Sorry, unmute. Thank you. The relevance and the fit are very important parts to think about in terms of the benefits. Next one, we're moving right along. We'll speak a little bit when and how to engage patient partners in research and some ethical and cultural competence considerations. I hear a little bit of background noise, but I don't know.
I think KGH has.
Okay, I can't see that. Thank you. KGH, go ahead.
Well, this is John Oliver. I'm part of the orthopedic division at KGH, and happy to attend this. You know, in orthopedics, we have multiple situations that we can engage patients in research, and we're embarking, I hope, in the next little while on what we're calling PREMs and PROMs, which is patient-reported outcomes and their participation. And this really is something that I think we can collaborate with researchers, and the students in medical school might even find some interest in this as they go through. We have a captured audience here in Kelowna, and they're very, we find our patients are very engaged in whatever we can direct them through. And I think this is a unique opportunity to do some of this patient-oriented research, and the outcomes that we're looking for that will help them are reduction in sort of things like length of stay in hospital, reduction in complications, etc. So I see a lot of advantage of this going forward.
Great. Thank you for that positive note. I really appreciate it, and thanks for jumping in. So this is a slide that is, it speaks to the dynamic of how and at what different stages patient partners can engage. I know it shows the linear piece. I mean, you are moving forward. I'm not going to speak to it in any detail, but it just potential areas of focus in the entire research cycle. We like to draw the research cycle more in a circle. But if you have a chance to look at this, I think the slides are going to be shared at a later stage, but I apologize for not knowing that in advance. But this slide really speaks to how diverse patient partners can have various skills and lived experience that can at different parts of a research project that you can learn from and build together with a patient partner. So it's not the researcher asking the same question. It can be a researcher asking different questions to different people, different time schedules at different times. So really, I hope you see the dynamic of this slide, although it is only in 2D. Patient engagement considerations. Now, we already spoke to this. Again, engage as early as possible. Patient partners, I hear them frequently say they like to be involved in writing the research grants. They would like to be involved in the beginning, and not when there's money there and everything is already gone through ethics and everything is already agreed, the methods are decided. They really want to see themselves as a partner from the beginning. Identify patients with related lived experience. I think that's a really important point to consider when you are recruiting patient partners. Ensure that if you can have a conversation that this is the person you may want to work with over the duration of a project or perhaps a certain time. What is the lived experience that can help further the project? Consider their ability, their skills, access, familiarity, and language, so patient partners can be appropriately oriented and supported. And I'll speak a little bit later how the BC Support Unit Interior Center can assist with that. Consider the optimal number of patient partners. Keep it manageable. Also understand dynamics even among patient partners themselves. Communicate in plain language. Words, language, and attention, two particular points are brought up by the patient partner. Plain language is so appreciated. Be clear from the beginning, if you can, about their role, their level of engagement. Is it consult, involve, collaborate, empower? Commitments, communication, how it's done. Is it through email? Is it through shared workspace, electronic community of practice, telephone calls, iPhone messaging, and decision making? Plan for patient orientation. Who will do it? What will be included, and who patient partners' contact will be. The patient partners are just like us as clinicians and researchers and staff, busy and they have ill-related concerns. They're looking after family members. So just be as clear as possible and have that conversation with your patient partners. Ethical, cultural considerations. Consider power dynamics and the potential experience of stigma. It could be coming from the past, the experience of stigma, but it might be awoken. Avoid tokenism through effective engagement. Consider potential barriers to participate and how they can be overcome. Physical, as well cognitive, emotional, logistical, financial. Again, there's tons of tools out there that could help you walk through some of these questions. Consider cultural norms around appropriate engagement and participation methods. Consider the community and the cultural and the context. Consider heterogeneity within cultural and or ethnic communities. So again, even if it might one group, there's variance in the group itself. Consider patient partner compensation and or reimbursement of expenses. So I'll give you a couple more minutes for the third question on our worksheet today. Again, a couple of minutes, and then I would like one person to share, please. Okay, anybody here in UBC or perhaps Nelson or KGH?
I have a quick question regarding this number here. So, correct me if I'm wrong. So the researcher kind of has a question, has their thesis in which they'll find a relevant patient population, which will then help them guide and refine this question into a more of a patient-oriented approach. Am I correct thus far?
Yes, the patient will tell you if they like it or not.
So I guess because you brought up tokenism a couple of times here, how do you avoid the risk of selection bias, i.e. picking a population that will reaffirm, your hypothesis, I guess, is my question. How do you ensure that you have more of a heterogeneous population?
Well, I think that's part of your recruitment, same as you would do recruit for your study participants. You're looking for variance, and so that stratification you can look for. I think it is important to just consider working with patient partners that have similar perspectives, but as well consider working with patient partners that may have different or other perspectives. And you may want to, in inviting people with different perspectives, it's something that you have to think about as a researcher, how am I going to navigate that in group meetings? So again, your recruitment is very important, and there's different ways that you can do for recruitment, but yes, definitely invite as well, as I have a quote but not with me, but it has to do about welcoming the strangers. So
okay, thank you.
I hope that helps. Okay. Then there will be some time for a little bit more discussion. I think, thank you for that question, because it already led a little bit. There's some questions coming up. I would like to remind you to use the illustrated definition of patient-oriented research early in the workshop. So those were the engaged patient partners in the beginning, the sentence, and as well the 5 criteria. And if you could just jot down a research project that you have done or are doing and are considering doing in which you could apply patient-oriented research principles. How will you apply what you have learned in a workshop? Set a goal for yourself. I'll be kind. So we have 7 minutes in which we can share some ideas, what you've done, what you plan on doing, and goal setting. I'm looking for somebody who would like to share what they wrote down and share with the group.
I can share some bits.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's working. So I've been working on a project around developing functional electrical stimulation exercise guidelines. And what we did for that project is that we first started to engage with patients and end users about the scope of these guidelines, whether we should be focusing on specific ways of using FES. We've included them at each stage of the process when we were, for example, reviewing the literature, when we're discussing the review of that literature, and based on those discussions, again, have a group of both the patients, the clinicians, as well as the researchers together to make sure that the guidelines that we build upon the systematic review are aligned with both the evidence as well as what sort of the language and what is feasible for people to deal with. So that's a project that I'm currently part of, and what I definitely take from the workshop today is a bit similar to the question that was phrased just now from the KGH, and that is around it's both tokenism as well as making sure you have enough critical people on board, because I do find also with myself that the tendency to shift towards people who are friendly and comfortable with the ideas that you have is a strong one, and how to best go about with getting more critical people on board who are constructive and critical, not just bashing it. But that is I find it a challenge, but also something I would like to set as a goal for myself.
Good for you, and thank you for sharing. Kim, to put you on the spot if you're comfortable, want to speak to some of the projects that you're involved with?
Sure, I think probably the easiest one. Sorry, I'll put my microphone on.
I know you know so much.
So my name's Kim Peek. I'm with the IH Research Department also. I'm a Research Navigation Coordinator. Oh, I'm on the big screen. Awesome. So I'm part of the There and Back Again study with Dr. Katrina Plamondon and other members of our team as well, such as Leslie Bryant and Dr. Nellie Olkey, who's with the UBC Okanagan Faculty of Nursing. And so the There and Back Again is collecting the experiences and stories of patients and caregivers and clinicians and family members that are involved in the transition of patients that live in rural communities that have to travel to a larger center for care and then their journey home. So we are actively going around the interior and having these conversations, especially with patients and their families, about their experiences of, as we know, they'll have higher costs that are due to travel, and their experiences, their stories can need to be shared. So that's what we're doing right now for that one study. I have the most robust amount of information about that one. And if anybody's interested in learning more, please feel free to contact me.
That comes.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Research at interiorhealth.ca.
Yeah, but now Kim has a key role, and so thank you for sharing, Kim. How about KLH? Nelson, you're my hometown. Are you able to share, or Kelowna?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to share as I'm pretty new to the research world and haven't really taken part in any patient-oriented research. I kind of just wanted to dip my toes in it and see and learn some valuable information, so it's been really appreciative. But one goal I did write down was for when I do get involved in research, which I'm sure I will at some point soon, is to keep checking back in throughout the research to make sure you're staying on track and staying patient-oriented throughout and not kind of going off on a tangent. So, yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm in Nelson, as I mentioned, in the pink building, so
Awesome.
Feel free to connect back.
Will do.
Okay. So I think if there's someone else that would like to share, Charlotte or one of your colleagues.
Sure, I'd be delighted. I've been actually doing what used to be called community-based participatory action research, which has now transformed basically into patient-oriented research. Although there is a subtle difference between the two in that the community-based may actually be preventing community members from being patients. One of the most current projects, we are working with 6 urban Indigenous communities, And we went into these communities and asked them a very open-ended question about their experience with the healthcare services and the healthcare in general. And then from there it transcribed that their priorities were culturally safe care for diabetes and obesity, which are epidemic in their communities. And so they formulated the research question, played a role in getting our grants. And so we are in the process of sort of train the trainer process with each of the communities, and they are now implementing diabetes, obesity interventions and helping with deciding everything. They basically are 50-50 partners on the whole process. Oh. And out of that has stemmed an interest in diabetes telehealth, so that has spurned another set of grants and processes. So it's, and I have learned, I'm sure, more than the community members. It's been wonderful.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Charlotte. I was just going to say that what an amazing point you brought up as well is that in the research process that it ends the research project, but as well in the conversations there's other research ideas, and it's really this learning group, and the researchers are learning as well as patient partners are learning. There's actually a wonderful publication which is not shared here, but it's called Patient Partnership and Ethnodrama, how as a researcher to acknowledge your vulnerability as well, and to engage with people who had at times difficult experiences, and engage with people who have wonderful ideas, and how you can grow together even as a new community. So it's there's definitely some jewels coming up now in the interior region. Thank you. Just have to quickly go through to see where we were. So just some tools. There is lots and lots of tools available, and lots of support available through the BC support unit. Interior, Kim, you've met, but there's other people in the research team, I'll introduce you very quickly, that help, that can assist, because take in consideration the time and the funding, but there's help. There's help on the way, you have to ask. Because we don't know. There's support for patient engagement planning, there's support, there's training offered, we can point to self-directed learning resources. We have a electronic data platform, RedCap. We have somebody in our department who can support researchers and patient partners with using RedCap. Knowledge translation training and resources are available as provincially and locally, research methods support, consultations on clinical trials, other research types. If not locally, then provincially. That's the network that we've created. If you're looking for a letter of support for research proposals and have engaged patient partners, then the BC Support Unit Interior Centre could write a letter of support. And as well, there is an online electronic communities of practice platform that you can use. Sorry, it's a bit small, I couldn't get it bigger, but you can find local contacts in the Interior Centre if you go to this BC Support Unit website. So if you have a question, it's circled here in red, inquiry form. It's right there. It's simple, name, address, and your location, what you're interested in. It comes in a centrally through Kim, who in her role then brings you in contact with the people either in our department or provincially, perhaps even another region. It's a simple form, and then you registered with us that you have a question, and you can have multiple questions. Tons of resources available. If you click on that, it's becoming a little bit large, the resources, but there's tons of tools available for patient-oriented research that have been nationally and provincially accumulated, that are in there, tools that can help you through the planning, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's really good and helpful tools out there. There's a couple ones that are being promoted. The peer framework by Hamilton, you'll get a resource for that, as well sorry, I don't know the full patient and public engagement tool, I believe it is. It's from McMaster University, as well as Engage 20. These are tools that can just help you planning the project. Become a member. I think that is just a point about wanting to register. You can become a member of an electronic community of practice. So there is electronic communities of practice around training capacity development working group. There is method cluster working groups. I'm sure there's communication working groups, and these groups meet either through internet or a phone or through the community, but you can engage also and meet other people across British Columbia. So I encourage you to, if you have a minute, to explore that as well, the electronic communities of practice. I think the timing was not bad. So my question is, did we meet the learning objective? Our question is, did we meet the learning objectives? Define patient-oriented research. Explain why patient-oriented research is valuable and beneficial. Identified some examples of when and how to engage patient partners in research. Identified some examples of important ethical and cultural competence considerations. Identify potential opportunities to apply, consider the challenges, describe what patient-oriented research are available through the UBC support unit and the Interior Center, and how to access them and contact us. So there's an opportunity for some questions, and for a couple more minutes, and then please complete the survey. And that one has been handed out, and here is information to stay in touch. So I just would like to open the floor if there is any further questions that you would like to share with us now.
I have a bit of a follow-up question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Around the tokenism.
Yep.
One of the things you mentioned on your slides was avoid tokenism through effective engagement.
Yeah.
Would you be able to give an example of that?
I think one of the examples that was given, the work from, for example, Rachel Hole, is a good example of having been able to work as a researcher with community with intellectual disabilities. And what I understand from conversation with her is actually that this group were able to secure monies for this researcher to further her projects. So this is a very interactive group still. The perception of tokenism is a tricky one in my experience as well. Good example right now, also for example, Leslie Bryant is doing, where working with indigenous populations to ensure that the questions and how the research project is moved forward comes from the group. An example of tokenism could be, for example, saying in your research grant that you're going to have research patient partners on your team, and then you only have 1 year, and then you don't get back to the patient partners. Does that answer your question? So effectively engage is, I don't have a definition for it, but it's in my experience and what I understand from the literature, it's the ability to ensure that the patient partner is engaged throughout the entire research process, which might be different for different people. It's like the same, how do you engage students? How do you engage patient partners? Some are fine with maybe once a month a meeting, other ones want to have more frequent contact. Yeah, but particularly challenge over time as a researcher to ensure that you close the loop and have a celebration even about the closure of the project and perhaps next step, what is being done. Yeah. And check back, and again, there's tools out there that can help you reflect. The reflective practice comes in. The PPET is a good one for reflective practice. I haven't used it myself, I'm about to, but to see if that is perhaps a tool even for yourself to realize, oh, maybe I went too much with, I think it was you who mentioned with the people that I can quickly connect with. And just as a professional to have that reflection on your own practice as well. Yeah, I hope that helps. Good question. Yeah?
I have a bit of a follow-up too on the tokenism.
Yeah.
Sorry, we keep going back to this.
Yeah.
So it's not so much about tokenism, but rather a bit of an ethical dilemma, I guess, that I grapple with. How do I find my patient partners? It's such an incredible gray zone when I'm allowed to approach a patient. I have to get ethical approval before I'm allowed to talk to them about research. There doesn't seem to be any such requirement if I ask them to contribute to the research, which makes sense conceptually, but the reason we have those processes is because we know in the clinical setting, the point of contact can influence the patient's responses. So the PI and the researcher, if the PI is also the care provider, they're never allowed to wear that same hat at the same time because we know there's a conflict of interest. So if I'm trying to approach someone to be my partner in research in the clinical setting, like how is it not a ethical, muddly situation?
Yeah. What I can say about it at the moment, what I know now is, first of all, it's a mind shift as well that you can have conversations with possible patient partners before you have ethics. So that's when they're the study subjects and participants. These new incentives and structures are now in place to engage with the patient partners in the design and in the development of the plan. There is what you mentioned more, the authority structure and the power structure, particularly as a clinician or a care provider. I fully appreciate that. And I think those are, that's when you are as a researcher in any space to allow time, not come across as if that people have a choice. And so one of the ways in which you can is just through posters, so people can self-initiate to contact, and perhaps not you as the researcher, as the clinician perhaps, but an administrative person. So it's a shift to already engage before you get the ethics approval and the operational approval and perhaps even the funding. But it's also how the engagement is more a level playing field and how to go about that. But it's a tricky one, yeah, and it's a 50 ways to learn your lover, I think, is what comes up in my mind. There's not one way. Have you anything to add in your experience?
So I just wanted to do a plug for the Patient Voices Network. The PVN is who we utilize for our patient partners.
Good point.
And yes, and there is, I mean, in my experience, approaching somebody when they're in the hospital and, and not having full faculty is never, that's just common sense, that's completely wrong and unethical. But the Patient Voices Network has participants that are able to join your project. It really varies on what your project is, but we'd be able to provide conversation support for that.
Yeah.
So, because it really does depend on your project and when you can use many different words, like when in the continuum, when in the timeline, because patients is everybody, right? patients as anybody that has access or will access or knows somebody that has access to the healthcare system. So it's literally all of us, and it can be any point in our lives. So it really depends on what your project is, and then we can provide support for you after that.
Yeah, and I would like to just, I brought the slide up again, we have in Interior Center a peer committee. So this peer committee is different people who have worked with us, the research team, since 2016, and have varied experience being a participant as research, as well worked for a National Research Institute, have worked with researchers, and these people are more than happy and want to be able to support researchers even in those initial, and they could also network. They have huge networks themselves that they can perhaps pull in to then connect you with. These people are there to support the new initiative and to support particularly Interior and this province to get it right. Okay, thank you very much. If you could spend a few minutes on the survey, please, and either leave them at your desk or gather them. I want to thank you again for the opportunity and your time. And by all means, reach out to us, and the information is here. And I will clarify if the participants, the attendees, can receive the slides, which I would hope so. There you are.
My apologies. Could I just ask one last question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I've been wondering if
you complete the survey too.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's ever been an effort to do kind of like a broad analysis of like a large patient body to kind of like do a thematic analysis to see what issues are most pressing so that they can be focused on instead of kind of just picking and choosing specific areas and then finding patients that represent those problems. I'm not very familiar with the research.
Right. So I hope I understand your question. So around a particular topic where patients have set priorities?
No, I'm sorry, I poorly phrased it. I guess I'm wondering is that there are a lot of issues plaguing healthcare right now, and I'm wondering if there's ever been an attempt to either qualitative or quantitatively analyze a large patient body to see what issues are most important to be focused on and then focusing on that as patient-oriented research?
Okay, I think it's a very good question. I can share with you two initiatives. I spoke earlier about a project that was based on the patient's peer committee. They wanted to have a better understanding how is patient engagement done across the spectrum of quality improvement, health system evaluation, and research. So we are very interested in how is patient engagement done across the spectrum in the learning health system. And then there's also another initiative, Building and Growing, where academics from different universities and researcher credentialed people from the colleges across British Columbia come together with different patient partner groups. There's different groups. I spoke about the peer committee, but there's other patient partners groups that have got together and to bring these people all together to do a priority setting, have a priority setting meeting. That's planned for next year. So I think your question is timely, and I hope I answered it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd also like to thank Dr. Karen Maywald for her presentation today and for remotely connecting with you all. And I'd like to thank all the attendees for participating. And again, if you have any questions, concerns, anything like that, please feel free to contact us. The Interior Center at bcsupportunit.ca or research@interiorhealth.ca. Both the same, go to the same place. Thank you very much.